Hey guys, welcome back to the homestead. My name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread, and it is time to do our weekly garden tour. If you are brand new to the channel, I am a blogger, writer, YouTuber, homesteader, and a number of other things. And my husband and I live here in northern Alabama, which is gardening zone 7B. And I have two different garden areas. I've got an in-ground no-till garden, and then I have a raised bed garden. And every week I take you on a walk through the gardens to show you some of the things that are taking place, what's happening, what's new, what we're struggling with, what's doing great. And I like to share the ups and the downs because gardening is a journey. It is never easy. There's always things we struggle with, whether you are a first-time gardener or you are well seasoned. So let's head into the garden. So right as we come in the gate, I've got a trellis that is covered with purple pod climbing beans. And I just noticed a Japanese beetle, so pardon me a moment while I grab my jar of water. Gotcha. So here's the thing about Japanese beetles. I learned last year that when you are approaching them, they think you're a predator or danger or something like that. They just let go of the leaf and they fall to the ground. So if I take my jar of soapy water and I put it underneath them, usually they'll fall right into it. That one was a little quick on the jump, but I got it anyways. So remember what I said about the ups and the downs? Now a couple of weeks ago I did a video and I talked about this was going to be a bad one, and it was in reference to dealing with pests this year. And unfortunately I think I was right. We had almost no winter at all here in northern Alabama last year. There was, I think, just a couple of days that were freezing temps, and I knew it meant we were going to have a lot of struggles with pests this year, and that we are. So just in the last day or two, my purple pod beans here have started setting blossoms. So I would imagine I'll start seeing itty bitty baby beans here in the next few days. This beautiful multi-headed lemon queen sunflower is just an absolute joy. It came back as a volunteer from last year, and originally it was over in another bed in a very awkward spot, and I transplanted it to this location, and as you can see, transplanting it didn't do any harm at all. Down here all along this row I've got all sorts of tomato plants, and for the most part they all seem to be doing pretty well. I grew tomatoes in this location for the first time last year, which was the year we established these beds, and over time our soil is gradually becoming better and better. Last year I wasn't really able to harvest hardly anything out of this bed as far as the tomatoes went. But as you can see, I've got some really gorgeous tomatoes happening here, and I am very hopeful for these beds. Those flowers there are Persian carpet zinnias, and those actually reseeded from last year. I did not plant those at all this year, and they are kind of growing all over the place, including my walkway right there, but I didn't have the heart to take them out. Now, one of the pests that I'm dealing a lot with this year is, of course, squash bugs. I think that's just a given. You know, you plant squash plants, you're going to deal with squash bugs. But this patch right down here is butternut squash, and in a couple of locations I have planted nasturtium. Now, I took a companion planting class a couple years ago at an area extension office, and in there I learned about planting things that go together, not just to thrive but sometimes for pest prevention. And nasturtium is one of those things that is supposed to be unsavory for squash bugs, and that if you plant it among your squash bugs it's supposed to keep squash bugs away. Well, I will tell you that my zucchini bed on the other side of the garden here has got squash bugs galore. It is a hunt every morning. I come out here with my duct tape and I remove all the eggs, then I spray down the plants with the water hose, because when you do that, all of the bugs climb up to get away from the water. Then I can snatch them and throw them in my jar of soapy water. But this butternut squash in here, I have a couple of nasturtium plants intermingled through there, although you can't really see them at this point because they're kind of hidden. But I have not found a single squash bug in this butternut squash, and I have not found a single squash bug egg, and I have looked pretty thoroughly. I mean, I could have missed some, but I haven't seen any, not a one. And I actually saw my first nasturtium blossom open up here. See right there. First of all, I love the variegated color in these nasturtium plants. And then I have that deep red nasturtium flower. This is called the Alaskan red nasturtium. And then right down in there, you can see one of my first little baby butternut squash. So this flower right here is actually butterfly flower, or milkweed, or swampweed. It's kind of got a number of different names. And this is a flower that will come back very easily. The seeds will blow in the wind like a dandelion, so you'll actually find these, once you have planted them, you're going to find them all over the place. I don't know how many of them I've got actually coming up in the driveway, and I'm going to try and transplant a few of them into some spots where I would like them to grow, because they're not going to make it in the driveway. So down in here at the end of this bed, I've got a whole bunch of pepper plants. These are all volunteers from last year, and there was actually probably a couple hundred of them that came up here. And I thinned out the vast majority of them, but I did leave a handful. I don't actually remember what kind of peppers these are. I know at the end of these two beds I planted peppers, but these are probably going to either turn out to be lipstick peppers or Tabasco peppers. I'm kind of hoping they're lipstick peppers. I actually didn't grow any lipstick or Tabasco peppers this year, so I would be happy with either of them. But I really liked those lipstick peppers. They have a very mild flavor, a lot like a bell pepper, and they grew really well. So, free peppers. Down in here I have some okra that I planted. I forget what this was called. It was Alabama something. I will put the name of it on the screen here so that you can see exactly what variety this is. It's actually doing pretty well. I have a spot right down in here where nothing seemed to happen. You remember what I said about the pest issues that we're having? Well, not only did we have a super mild winter, but we had so much rain that I literally joked that I needed to get out my waders this winter. I don't think there was any time period where I was really able to put on normal boots. I had to wear my muck boots all the time because it was so wet. Well, one of the problems that we've had because of the wetness is slugs, and I have had to reseed many of my plants this year. But because there's a whole patch right there that's just nothing, and all the rest seem to have come up fine, I'm thinking that's probably what happened to the baby okra too. This here is a scarlet coneflower, kind of like your purple coneflower, your echinacea. It's related. It's just this beautiful bright color. And when the heads go to seed like they do here, I just leave them because the yellow finches love to eat these seeds. And I mean, I might take a couple of the heads to save the seeds to grow some more, but I enjoy seeing the little yellow finches out here. They remind me of my grandmother. This is Gaillardia, and I believe this is the Indian blanket flower variety. This came back as a perennial. Something that I have learned in the last week or so, that this is actually a native flower. It has grown wild all over grasslands and prairies, and there is a movement to try and bring this back as a wildflower. This patch in here is all different kinds of peppers, along with some zinnias that I planted down in there. Those are the cut and come again zinnias. This is one of my Chinese 5-color pepper plants, and while the pepper plant is a little bit puny, you can see how many peppers these things grow. I grew 3 of these plants last year and I had thousands, no exaggeration, thousands of peppers. Here you can see more of the Persian carpet zinnias. These are a small zinnia, kind of like a marigold. But what I love about them is the variety of the patterns. They're all shades of red, orange, and yellow. But they have ones that look kind of like this. Then you have the yellow. And then you have these really cool ones over here that sort of look like the blanket flowers. So I just love the variety in these Persian carpet zinnias. This is Coreopsis, which is also a perennial. And this particular plant is, again, another one of those native plants that used to be a prairie flower, a grassland flower, and is being brought back. So it does very, very well here, and so it's another great plant to have in the garden. The butterflies love it, the bees love it, and it's beautiful. Over here on this trellis we have the anti-half-runner green beans, and they're doing well. They didn't grow quite as quickly as the purple ones, but they have seemed to have caught up to them. And so we will be seeing beans here happening before too long. Now as you look in this bed, there's my anti-half-runner green beans. All through here you're going to see okra, and you're going to see zinnias, and some Tulsi, holy basil right there. Other than the anti-half-runner green beans, everything all through here was volunteers. It all came back on its own. And I can see that that okra plant right there is getting flower heads. Now some of these may actually be roselle flower, and I really hope that some of them are. Roselle is beautiful. It is in the same family as okra. They're related to one another, so they look very similar. But the flowers can be used for a wonderful tea. So I'm hoping that some of these are roselle flowers. And again, all of these zinnias that you see in here came back on their own, self-seeded. These sunflowers over here are some Mongolian giant sunflowers. They can get extremely tall. They are single head sunflowers. So they'll get really, really big, and they'll have a giant sunflower at the very top. And so while they may not be as pretty as the lemon queens, simply because they only have the one flower, because they get so tall, they are absolutely majestic, and I love growing them. Now down here at the bottom of this trellis, these are a French green bean variety, and they're doing pretty good. I have a little bit of pest damage, but overall they're not doing too bad. So I'm very hopeful for these. Now unfortunately on this trellis is my Chinese noodle beans, and they have been getting hit hard with pests. The Chinese noodle beans had to be replanted more than once. Well, I take that back. They were replanted once, so this is my second attempt to get them going this year. Again, the slugs. The slugs have been a nightmare. Last year we had really bad pest problems. The Chinese noodle beans last year were also hit really, really hard. They looked at least this bad, if not worse, but they were actually able to bounce back, and I had Chinese noodle beans galore. So my fingers are crossed, and I'm hopeful that these will be able to recover as well, just like the ones did last year. Down in here I have got some daikon radishes, I've got some onions. Those are called Georgia Sweets. They're just some starts that I picked up at the local farmers co-op. Over on this side I've got Jubilee watermelons. I have a patch of the lemon queen sunflowers, and then down here on the end I've got yellow crookneck squash, which in the last couple days the leaves are starting to look a little bit rough. It's not powdery mildew, I'm not really sure exactly what the issue is here. Actually, I take that back. I may have an issue with my watering system now that I'm looking at this, because this dahlia was looking beautiful and now it looks like that. Alright, so it looks like I'm going to need to troubleshoot my watering system. I installed a drip line watering system in the garden this year, and for the most part it's been doing wonderful. It has taken so much time, it's freed up so much time, but clearly there's an issue here, because these were looking great and now they're suddenly not. Like that dahlia was gorgeous. I mean, it would look like it was getting ready to flower, and now it's looking like that. So actually, when I'm done filming here, I'm going to turn on my watering system and check my lines, because there's lines underneath all of this mulch, and so I'll check the ends and see if I've got water reaching all of them. That is my zucchini patch. And then over in here you can see I've got a bunch of tomatoes in this raised bed, along with several different kinds, actually 4 different kinds of basil. We have licorice basil, purple opal basil, Genovese basil, your classic Italian basil, and some holy basil, Tulsi. This bed in here is all peppers, and they're looking a little bit wilty. We have been extremely hot this week and extremely dry, so I'll give them some water here in a little bit and they'll bounce right back up. I'm very happy to see this one right here, even though it's super tiny. This is my jigsaw pepper, and I love the variegated color on the leaves. That's why I got it. And I don't know, I think it's kind of a spicy pepper. To be honest, I don't remember. I just saw the variegated leaves and I knew I had to grow them. So yeah, they grow very, very slowly, and not good germination for the seeds, but they seem to be doing well now. Alright, so now we're out here in the front. This is my raised bed garden, and I love having this garden out here, and you'll notice that out here there's a lot more flowers, and that's because it's right in front of our house. I can sit right here on my porch swing or on my rocking chair, and I can just enjoy everything that's growing out here. So I'm very intentional about growing more flowers out here along with all the edibles. I want this front garden area to be extra beautiful. So this bed here behind me is my long bed, and I love this style of using the old tin roofing and the wood framing. This is my favorite style as far as how they look, and ideally I would love to have all of my beds like this. However, this year I built a couple raised beds in a different manner that was super easy, and while I would prefer to do them all like this, I have to confess, this one's a lot of work. The other style was super easy, so I don't know if I'll make any more like this. I probably will, because I still have some more other metal, but yeah. So out here I start with a big old patch of oregano. We've got this is a flowering sage down in here. It's a mix of Blue Monday sage and Pink Sunday sage. I just kind of mixed the seeds in right there. I've got some yarrow back in there. Again, we have lots of herbs. Here's some more Genovese basil. That is some more oregano, because it's just kind of all over the place. This is chicory. Here I have cinnamon basil, and if you have never grown cinnamon basil, oh, it is an amazing basil, and it really does smell like cinnamon. It smells like you have a handful of cinnamon sticks and a handful of basil. Up in here I have several tomato plants, and the vast majority of them are doing great. However, I had to come out here this morning and completely rip one of them out, and I will be talking about that in tomorrow's video, so be sure to come back and I'll explain why I had to completely remove a great big tomato plant. So on this trellis here, you can see it goes all the way up and over and connects to the other raised bed. Over here, I've got a couple of the beautiful Mongolian giant sunflowers. I love sunflowers. I plant all kinds of them. And then over along the trellis, of course, I've got several different kinds of tomato plants. I actually think most of these are the Berkeley's pink tie-dye tomatoes. The one on the far end is a purple Russian, and you can definitely tell it's a different kind of tomato plant. But over on this side, I've got two more tomato plants. Down in the middle, I've got loofah gourds, which you can see are climbing the trellis. They will go crazy. If you've never grown loofah gourds, this stuff grows like kudzu. I'm not even joking. And I know at some point it'll completely choke out these tomatoes, but I had so many tomato plants, I wasn't too worried about it. This will go all the way up and just completely cover this trellis. On the other side of the trellis, right here, this is Kajari melon. I have a couple of these that I've got coming up the trellis here, and I noticed this week I've got little blossoms. Now it's evening, so they're all closed, but there are Kajari melon blossoms all over the place in here. So I'm very, very hopeful. I always say hopeful. I can't say I can't wait to try something because you never know what's going to happen. But I am very hopeful that I will have the opportunity to try Kajari melons this year. Now, the Berkeley pink tie-dye is a variety of tomato that I've never grown before, and I grew them because they come from Wild Boar Farms. They are a really cool looking tomato. I mean, they are beautiful tomatoes. Last year I grew the Blue Beauty tomatoes from them, loved them. But I had also ordered the tie-dye tomatoes, and so I thought, well, let me grow those this year for the wow factor. But one of the things that I have noticed about this variety of tomatoes is when you see the blossoms developing, if you have those fasciated blossoms, which when you look at them, it's multiple blossoms all fused together, and that's what gives you those weird cat-faced, wonky, funky looking tomatoes that are shaped just crazy. These Berkeley pink tie-dye, and I don't know if it has something to do with where I'm growing them or where I live, I noticed there is a lot of fused blossoms on these varieties of tomatoes, and I'm getting a lot of funky looking tomatoes. I mean, I try to go through and remove them when I see fused blossoms, but there were so many in these plants. And just to give you an idea, I'm actually gonna find one here to show you and pull it off and give you a good look at it. Oh, here's one. This is a little one, so it'll be easy to get off of there. Alright. This is one of those funky fused blossom tomatoes. I mean, look at this thing. Looking at the bottom of it, this is probably 3 tomatoes in one. And what happens when you have tomatoes like this is most of this is not going to be edible. Now this part here that's big and round, this part might grow to be edible if I'd left it on the plant, but all of these areas where you have these creases, you end up with that tough, just hard as a rock, you can't really do anything with part. So if I have one of these cat-faced tomatoes in here, if it's not too bad, I'll leave some of them. But if they're really awful looking, I'm not going to leave them on the plant, because I don't want the energy that these plants are using being directed into tomatoes that I know aren't going to be any good. So I will pull those off as I see them. I would much rather the plant put the energy into the good tomatoes and not waste it on stuff like this. This is one of my flower beds that I have out here. This one's actually all flowers. But one of the things I wanted to mention was this particular flower right here. So I had purchased some bulbs, and these were supposed to be a stilbe. Clearly this is not a stilbe. This looks to me like some sort of dahlia. I'm just guessing the package got mispacked. I mean, they're beautiful dahlias. Don't get me wrong. But I do wonder what variety these are. Now on camera, I don't think it's showing up how dark the color is. These are a deep, deep burgundy flower. And I'm just going to call them a dahlia because I'm pretty sure that's what they are. I don't know what variety they are. They are beautiful. Alright, so right here behind me, this was a new addition this week. A couple weeks ago, I ordered one of these grow towers. It's called a green stalk. They're made in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I had been wanting to get one of these for a couple of years now, ever since I first saw them. And I just thought they were the coolest thing. I thought they looked like something fun to grow in. And so I got one. And so this one came this week. And the top tier, I have planted a variety of zinnias because I love zinnias and I love having color out here in the front garden. And all the rest of it, the other 4 tiers, because this was a 5-tier tower, the other 2 tiers are green beans, different than what I have out there. These are bush beans. I planted some jade bush beans, and I planted, oh gosh, what was the other one called? It was a burgundy green bean. It's a purple color one, but bush beans. So we'll see how these do. Now when I put it in, I made sure that the stone that I had it on was level. Was being the key word. It has kind of settled into the ground a little bit. So I'm gonna actually have to come out here and adjust it a little bit to make sure it's nice and level. That way it waters evenly all the way down through the tower. So that is it for today. Thank you for joining me on my walk through the gardens to see some of the things that we have going on here at the homestead. If this was your first time here, again, my name is Constance and I'm a blogger at cosmopolitancornbread.com, where I've got hundreds of home cooking recipes and homesteading related articles about gardening and chicken care and all sorts of good things. And here on the YouTube channel, I do at least 3 videos every week about homesteading, home cooking, and back to basics. So if you aren't already subscribed, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button and come and hang out with us once again. You can also sign up for my free newsletter. That is the easiest way to stay up to date on everything that is happening both on the website as well as the channel here. Now I do these garden tours every week all through the garden season, but once a month the garden tour is part of the collaboration with the Homesteaders of America. There are several channels who are participating this year and doing these tours, and I happen to be one of those channels. So next week's garden tour is actually going to be part of that collaboration, which means it will be going up early in the morning. Normally all of my videos publish sometime around noon Central Time, but as part of that collaboration it'll be going up a bit earlier in the morning. So be sure to come back and see what is happening here on the homestead. I have a feeling that there might be some things that we're actually going to be able to have a first harvest of. So we're getting ready. The garden is about to hit that crazy time where it is going to be a lot of work. We're in that anticipation phase where it's filling out, it's looking amazing, it's filling you with that anticipation of what might happen, but in a minute it's going to be coming hot and heavy, and we're going to be canning and processing and harvesting everything we can. So that is it for today. Again, thanks for joining me here on the garden tour. My name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread, and I will talk to y'all next time.